All roads lead to the Vain.
Hey, this is Brad Chmielewski with another Shatter The Vain mini episode. And on this episode, I'm joined with Sam, AKA JustCasual from the Lola podcast and many of other things you are working on. I will let him introduce them because he knows all his projects better than I do. But welcome, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brad. You want me to list down a few of the projects I'm working on?
Yeah, sure. Let everyone know.
Yeah, so I've been working on the League of Legends Anonymous podcast for just over 3 years now. That's the Lola podcast. We talk about League and try to have entertaining and educational conversations to basically help our community get better and have more fun playing the game. Other than that, basically the last year or so, I've been really trying to push, see how far I can take this podcasting stuff. So I've been creating content for Weldon Green, who's an esports trainer, psychologist, and assistant coach to G2 Esports at the moment. He's coached a few other teams like TSM and CLG, most notably. So I made a season of a podcast for him just talking about performance in esports. And there's a few other just random inklings of things that I'm trying to do here and there, just trying to get my name out there and just explore things that I can do. So, yeah.
And one of those is a esports show now, right?
Yeah, so there's a amateur organization called Ever Esports. The CEO of that, Ever, he was on our podcast as a guest, and we liked him. And then after that, I've kind of built a relationship with him recently. So he has a lot of amateur organizations in League of Legends, COD, I think Smash, and a few other games that they're expanding out to. And they have streamers and teams and stuff like that. So just trying to cover the amateur esports scene because there is absolutely no content about that.
No,
and yeah, it's a hard scene too because I don't think many people care about it, but I definitely still think there are stories behind that, especially when everyone's like, wait, esports is a thing? I can get into esports? What's it take to get into esports? So just kind of telling those untold stories as best as I can.
Right. So has this caused you to have to start paying attention to more games and I guess organizations outside of the League world now?
Now, if I were doing my job super, super diligently with that, absolutely. Luckily, since it's kind of more of a smaller thing, and I just ultimately time is the biggest resource that I lack, right? Mm-hmm. So I can only do so much. So I try to do my due diligence and research, but especially when we're talking about the amateur scene, what's going on there, it's really hard to find out what's going on without having conversations with these people. So that's kind of the cool thing about the podcast where I just kind of talk to them and find out what's going on. And because I've been following League of Legends, which is probably the leading esports scene at the moment, I think so. Yeah. Maybe. So, arguably.
Yeah, maybe COPS or Smash are kind of pretty big too. But yeah, those are probably, League's the biggest, I think.
Yeah, so because of that, I've had some exposure with that. I think I'm able to bring that knowledge in and just see hey, what's going on with the Overwatch scene? And these guys really know what's going on because they're in the thick of things. They're in the grind of it, which is what the podcast is called. And because of that, luckily, I can rely on them to tell me about it. And it's kind of a educational experience for me, and which I think makes it more relatable to the listeners as well when we're both learning at the same time, and I'm hopefully asking the right questions and getting the right stories out of my guests on the show to be really relatable and interesting to our listeners.
Okay. Well, as you're diving into these other games and things like that, learning about them, I kind of wanted to ask, from a League of Legends player, what would make you try or explore a new MOBA? There's a lot of talk right now of the 5v5 that Super Evil Megacorp is developing for Vainglory, and that coming to a mobile device, iPhone and touch and everything. And I know you have played or have looked into Vainglory just a little bit, enough to know it's a thing.
Yes. I've played it a few times. A little long of a game to just be on the toilet playing, unfortunately.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, coming into Vainglory and the little experience I have with it, something that's really attractive to me with Vainglory is it's mobile. I mean, the mobile device is the future of everyone's attention. And actually, it's the present and the future. Yeah. Until maybe, who knows how how crazy VR gets when you can put like contact lenses in and stuff like that. But right now it's a mobile device, and in the probably long future it's mobile device. So having the ability to game anywhere you go is super super attractive. And when it comes to MOBAs, like League of Legends was my first MOBA, and when I found League of Legends, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like everything I've been looking for in a game.
Yeah.
So when it comes to different MOBAs, I think they all are really attractive. I tried a few of them on the mobile, like Mobile Legends is the big one that's in the news recently for copying Riot Games' game. And then Vainglory was really, really fun. I think there was like Call of Champions that I played, which is like a 5-minute game, so it's quick. I think what would get me really into Vainglory is the ease of getting into it. Because I've been playing League of Legends since Season 1, so that's like around 7 years now.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine someone coming into this game this year and trying to figure out this game. And for me, against my online handle JustCasual, I don't find myself being able to play games very, very casually unless I'm just like, hey, I'm with friends, I just want to play. I really like to get deep into things. So I want to learn what's going on. And what interests me most about MOBAs is the whole strategic part of it.
Right, okay.
And if I can't access that, then it's all a mechanical thing, which I don't think I'm a very mechanical player, very good at that. So something that would attract me to a MOBA is a really nice transition into it where I don't need to know everything, but I can still like participate in using my brain in playing the game.
Right. Have you tried to do like have you recently started making a new account on like League of Legends to see what their onboarding process is now versus when you started in season 1?
I have a Smurf account. I've had it for like years, and I haven't even gotten to 30 yet because I barely play on it. So I actually don't know. Luckily, I have some exposure to what's going on just because of our listeners, and when they write in questions or they join our Discord and we talk to them, we kind of see the struggles that they're going with, like trying to learn 136 champions or just like learning a new role and stuff like that. So I kind of know what's going on from like a third-party perspective.
So as far as a strategic element of it, do you feel like Vainglory being a 3v3 right now doesn't have that strategy maybe that you would be looking for in a 5v5? Because League has the 3v3, but it's overlooked. It's not even like really talked about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Is that because of the strategy?
No, I would say maybe I didn't answer the question correctly before. It's not that Vainglory doesn't have that strategy in it. I think it's that I don't have the time, or I don't make the time just because my focuses are elsewhere and like trying to work on my podcast and my craft and stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't have the time to really learn like how a champion works, new builds and stuff like that. Although I will say Vainglory, I think because there's less characters and there's less items and there's not a runes and mastery system, there's not crazy tweaking to numbers in it. It made it really easy to get into it. And actually, first time I played it, I had a hard time with just like the whole touch part because I was playing on a small like iPhone 4C or 5C or something like that.
Oh yeah,
that was pretty small. And then once I got my like a Galaxy phone, it was a lot easier to play. And I actually got like sucked into it for about a week where I was playing actually pretty regularly because it was much easier to deal with. And again, I think the learning curve into it is pretty good. I don't think it's too overwhelming actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about like the time thing. I think that's something that kind of drew me to Vainglory very early on. Was like League games were when I kind of stopped playing as much. They were creeping in the like hour-long games, and you're just like devastated after you spend an hour and you lost. Whereas
especially if you lost.
Yeah, if you spend 30 minutes and you lose, you're kind of like, oh well. But in Vainglory case, most games are like around 20 minutes. So is that like that's probably enticing, right? As far as the time management.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like spending the time to learn it as well, it's much quicker to learn if you really want to go into depth into things. And I think just because the size of the game compared to League, just the variables in there are smaller. So being able to successfully learn a strategy and implement it is probably a lot faster in Vainglory than at League Legends, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I think that's a really good thing, actually. And I'm sure there's stuff way over my head that I'm not even thinking about how complex that game can get as well.
So I guess looking at it from the idea of like how or what makes people transition from one MOBA to the other, do you think it's just you get bored of one, or you just totally want to try something else, because there is often talk about like you can't know multiple MOBAs. I tried when we did the show, the podcast, The Lane, and League and Vainglory and Heroes. There's too many numbers and too many heroes to focus on one.
I mean, if I wasn't podcasting about League of Legends and that wasn't like my main thing that I'm doing, I probably still would be playing League, but I definitely would be playing other stuff. Like I've picked up PUBG, right? Recently, I'm horrible at first-person shooters, so that kind of keeps me coming back to League when I'm like dying so quickly in that game. But I think a big thing is hype, like marketing and hype, because ultimately I'm playing Vainglory by myself, right? None of my friends are interested in it, so therefore, like, what's keeping me there unless it's like a really deep competitive drive in myself where I'm like really enjoying the game. The reason why I play MOBAs is because I can play with other people, but then when you're playing anonymously without friends on voice comms and stuff like that, it becomes I'm just playing against random people that are upset or I get upset and it's just not as enjoyable. So I think like with PUBG, I don't really know if it's gonna last long. I've heard people say that they think it's like huge hype, and then once H1Z1 gets their thing together, that H1Z1 will be better because it's a faster game. PUBG, it's much slower, but a lot of people are playing it and a lot of people are excited about it, and that brings people. And like I can go onto my Discord channel and find 3 other people to jump into a PUBG game really quickly. If I said, hey, anyone want to play Vainglory with me, or anyone want to play Call of Champions, or anyone want to play Heroes of the Storm, it might take it would take me personally a lot more effort to find that, just because of, I guess, my circle of friends. Right.
And the learning curve of, like we said, a MOBA has multiple facets, where PUBG and H1, you point your gun and shoot. That's the base of it. A MOBA is not. Like, the base is, you have to shatter the crystal or the nexus or the vein, but there's too many factors in between there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that's interesting. I love hearing, I guess, why people play one MOBA versus the other, and if there's a switch, because there's always that struggle of there's only so much of the audience, so how do you capture some of that?
Sure. Yeah, and like I said before, a lot about marketing and hype. I don't actually, if I talk to my friends, I don't think many people know about Vainglory. Right. I think it's a smaller community. I think it's a very passionate community. I know they love people that play the game, love that game, and they're really into it. And I think it has so much potential in being a faster game, and it's mobile. I feel like maybe just people haven't got it in front of them and haven't played it. I think that could be a big issue where you don't even have a chance to hook them in.
Right. And there's a slight stigma to mobile gaming versus PC gaming. It doesn't feel as legit to a lot of people. Yeah. Still, I think it's going to take years.
Yeah, when you think of mobile gaming, you think of Candy Crush and Farmville. that's where your head goes to.
Yeah. So that may turn people off. But yeah, cool. Well, Sam, thanks for chatting about League a little bit and how you got into it. This was great. Where can people check out your podcast or follow you? What's the best place to get in touch?
Yeah, so the best place for me is probably Twitter at JustCasual9. It's pretty simple. Unfortunately, at JustCasual is taken, so I had to put a 9 at the end of it.
Okay.
But besides that, the Lola Podcast, it's an acronym, League of Legends Anonymous, Lola Podcast. That's our website. That's our Twitter. Those are probably the best places to check that out. And if you go to my Twitter, you can also find the other projects I'm working on. I tweet about them and stuff like that.
Very cool. Well, thanks. Yep. And be sure to subscribe and look for more mini episodes of Shatter The Vain soon. Take care.
Let's get this over with.